With that, can I have a motion to come out of the executive session?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Varela, will you take the roll?
Member Crawford,
Yes.
Member French,
Yes.
Member Jackson,
Yes.
Member Nixon, Member Nixon.
Yes.
Thank you. Member Rayner. That's a yes from Rayner.
Yes.
And Chair French, is Mr. Wartell still on the phone call with you?
Yes, he is, but he won't be voting because he's trying to dial in, and so he is listening, but he is on the phone.
Okay, but he's not voting.
And with that, just for the record, the only item discussed in executive session.
Chair French, sorry, I didn't call the results. That motion passed unanimously if Member Wartell is not voting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. So I will go back and say, for the record, the only item discussed in executive session was CPC 249-21. And with that, I will turn this over to Member Crawford.
Yeah, thank you, Chair French. I would like to make a motion that the board modify the findings of the public record letter on the basis that the findings and recommendations were not consistent with the record evidence, specifically to show the responding officer in violation of SOP 2-60-4-A preliminary investigations on the basis that the police report shows inattentive driving on the part of one driver and no driver error on the part of the other driver, while the evidence shows that both drivers were in the bike. Sorry, I can't say this right. Both drivers were in the bicycle lane when they shouldn't have been.
And that's your motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? If not, Ms. Varela, will you take the roll?
Member Crawford,
Yes.
Member French,
Yes.
Member Jackson,
Yes.
Member Nixon,
Yes.
Member Rayner.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you. And we'll move on to item 10. Item 10A, consideration of PPRB, policies with no recommendations. Member Crawford?
Yeah, thank you for that. I will, if I can sort out which document I want to share a document with you real quick. Oh, could I get screen sharing permissions? I think you might have to do that, Director Ewing.
I can certainly do that. One moment. Why are you not cooperating with me, bud? The computer, not you. Member.
I'm doing my best.
You are, technology and I are just not friends this evening. No, I don't want to share my screen. There we go. You should be able to do it now.
Yep, that did it. Okay. So we'll start out with policies on which the Policies and Procedures Review Subcommittee is not recommending that the board recommend any changes. Those policies that were considered or approved by APD's PPRB in the last month are 1-9 compliance and oversight, prisoner transport unit, tactical emergency medical support, small unmanned aircraft systems operations, rights and safety of onlookers, crashes involving department-owned vehicles, preliminary and follow-up investigations, hospital procedures and rules, self-assessments, and shoplifting. I would like to make a motion that the board In the past, we have actually tasked Ali Abbasi with this. Since he's not with us anymore, I will maybe make a motion that the board direct me to inform the APD Policies and Procedures Review Board that we are not recommending changes to those policies.
So moved.
Second.
You're on mute.
I'm sorry, we have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? If not, Ms. Varela, will you take the roll?
Member Crawford,
Yes.
Member French,
Yes.
Member Jackson,
Yes.
Member Nixon,
Yes.
Member Rayner.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passed unanimously.
Okay. And we'll move on to B. Member Crawford? Policy recommendations?
Yeah, thank you. So based on its review, the Policy and Procedures Subcommittee is recommending that the board make a recommendation to APD on policies 2-65 and 3-6. These are sort of matching pairs of policies. I believe 2-65 is titled Language Access Program and 3-6 is titled Language Access Policy. I might not have this completely right, but they're both, the topic of both is language access. Our specific recommendation, and I wrote this really succinctly, so allow me to stall for just a moment while I pull up this policy document so that I can articulate a little better what the changes we actually wanted to see were. While I'm stalling, I'll just give you the general idea. These policies are about how APD interacts with people with limited English proficiency, called LEPs, in the policy, especially providing interpretation services. This also covers things like having APD documents available in languages other than English. So the policy recommendation that the subcommittee recommended is a clarification to 2-65A1B. Let's see if I can find this real quick. I'm sorry, in the future, I'm going to put a little more thorough explanations in this document. I think I meant to, and then been a little slammed this last week, so I did not. So 265-5A1B1, that's a long one, says consistent with this SOP, if an LEP victim demands that person act as their interpreter. I'm sorry, this is discussing the use of non-professionals as interpreters, for example, family members, bystanders, kind of anyone around who speaks the language of a person the police are interacting with. The policy says consistent with this SOP, if an LEP victim demands that person act as their interpreter, or if an LEP person demands that a victim act as their interpreter, department personnel shall refuse the request and use department provided interpretation. So this would suggest that it is not permissible for someone other than a department provided professional interpreter to be used. However, policy 2-65-5C2, voluntary, affirmative, and knowing interpreter choice of LEP person, states that department personnel may comply with such a demand for child, family, friend, or other non-professional language interpretation only after, and then lists 3 conditions, which are essentially that they have to advise the person that it may not be a good idea, and that they still have to voluntarily and affirmatively make that choice. It then goes on and gives some sort of caveats and practices around that. The point here is that those 2 bits of the policy appear to contradict each other. One says that it can't be done, the other says it can be done under certain circumstances. So the recommendation is to revise the policy to resolve that confusion. A second and related recommended change is to 2-65-C-2. That is, sorry, you're really experiencing me trying to find sections of these policies live. I apologize. I think I might have that policy number wrong, 265-5C2. There is a point in this policy that I may have to locate a little better where there are what appear to be missing words. It basically looks like it's probably just a typographical error, but it's a little confusing because it seems like the words that are missing might clarify whether this policy is referring to professional or non-professional interpreters. That is sort of significant because at the beginning of this voluntary affirmative and knowing interpreter choice of LEP person policy, that's 265.5C2, it says department personnel may encounter non-emergency situations where an LEP person demands to use a language interpreter of their own choice and at their own cost, including professional interpreters, children, family, and friends. However, later paragraphs in that same policy only say, for example, number 2, department personnel may comply with such a demand for child, family, friend, or other non-professional language interpretation. Just note that it says including professional interpreters in the first paragraph, and then in the second paragraph says child, family, friend, or other non-professional interpreters. That made it unclear to the subcommittee whether or not this policy was actually supposed to apply to a situation where someone opts to hire a professional interpreter at their expense instead of using the one provided by APD. So the recommendation is to clarify that issue. And there's an issue in the earlier policy that prohibits the use of non-professional interpreters as well. That's where it seems like there's a typographical error, and I think it's actually possible that it's supposed to say non-professional and that word is just missing. Finally, there's 3-6-6-E. This is kind of a strange part of 3-6 language access policy. Previous versions, well, just for context, there's a term defined in this policy of safe harbor language. I don't think that comes out of APD. I think that comes out of some sort of like federal or state law or regulation. But the idea is that a safe harbor language is a language that greater than 5% or 5% of the population of the city of Albuquerque or 1,000 residents of the city of Albuquerque speak. 3-6 has an appendix which lists which languages are safe harbor languages in Albuquerque based on census data. But it also oddly right before that appendix has this very last section 366E, which is titled Findings as of May 2022, which is already sort of an odd thing to have in a policy. And frankly, when I read this policy, I just had a really hard time understanding what 366 even means. For example, 366E1 says Spanish. The department has identified that LEP persons residing in the city of Albuquerque require the majority of translation and interpretation services into Spanish for Mexico. And there's a couple points in that sentence where I get kind of lost and I'm not sure what it's actually saying. There's also sort of an odd point. It says the exact same thing about Vietnamese and Dene, and then it discusses carries and the fact that materials won't be translated into carries. The recommendation is really that this whole section 366E probably just needs to be rewritten because it's a little hard right now to tell what it actually means. So it needs clarification and kind of broadly, it needs to be written in the form of policy rather than findings. Since right now it's difficult to interpret whether or not it's saying that APD must provide interpretation into Spanish, Vietnamese, Dene, and carries and Chinese, which are not all safe harbor languages in the city of Albuquerque, or whether APD doesn't need to provide interpretation into those languages. So it's kind of an important issue. I realized that was kind of confusing. Hopefully that came across reasonably well. The bottom line is just there's several points in these two policies that appear to just be poorly written, and it just ends up being confusing whether or not the policy requires APD to do certain things or not. That was a motion, if I didn't word it that way up front, to probably have myself draft that recommendation and then submit it to the chief of police.
Okay, well, I'll second that motion. Is there any more discussion? If not, Ms. Barella, will you take the roll?
Member Crawford,
Yes.
Member French,
Yes.
Member Jackson,
Yes.
Member Nixon,
Yes.
Member Rayner.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you so much.
We'll move on to item C, IMR 16. Jesse? Member Crawford?
I am back. IMR 16 has been published, and I'll apologize. As I said, I've been really slammed with work the last few weeks, so I have not gone through it as thoroughly as I would like to. That said, I have kind of pulled out a couple of things that I think we might want to put in a response letter. And just for new board members, I'll say typically whenever there is an IMR, an independent monitor report, the board submits a letter to the court with sort of our response to that report. The two items that stood out to me were, I think we should articulate that the staffing of the board continues to be a problem. We still have open board seats. We are working to onboard new team members, and it continues to be very important that we get training clarified as thoroughly as possible to sort of keep the process of onboarding new board members efficient. Second, because there are several points where the IMR very specifically addresses the way that the board reviews cases, I think it's worth stating in the letter that for a couple of reasons, both the change in the ordinance and the recent hiring of a new executive director, we are just broadly in sort of a transitional state as far as the way that we handle case review. And that we're hoping to kind of continue to improve in that regard as we go forward. Now, as I said, I only have limited time to look over the IMR and come up with those. So if Ms. Gooch has any additional points you think would be worth bringing up, I would love to hear them.
Counselor Gooch?
I swear I'm not putting her on the spot.
Thank you, Chair French, Member Crawford. I agree with those ideas. I also will note that there was a discussion in the IMR about the unfilled policy analyst position. And I think there's an opportunity for the board and the agency to discuss all of the unfilled positions that the agency needs to fill and needs assistance in filling, namely assistance from the city with actually putting out a job description and a posting for at least one of those open positions. And that dovetails into the trend analysis that the board was discussed about, that it was discussed the board needs to focus on trend analysis. I think those fit together, and maybe something you want to consider raising. In the event it's helpful for your discussion tonight, your last letter that was submitted for IMR 15 discussed the unfilled board positions. It discussed access to OBRD videos. It discussed the training challenges that I think we've overcome, and we are working diligently to get moving in the right direction, as the IMR noted. And it also talked about access to materials for officer-involved shootings and serious use of force cases.
Well, I would also say if any other board member has anything that they want to respond to, that you could let Jesse, are you going to be writing it? I know you're busy with your job, or is our counselor going to be writing it?
Yeah, let me go ahead and make a motion so that we can have a very concrete discussion. I would like to move that the board direct me to draft a letter to the court in response to the IMR. For the purposes of the motion, I'm going to say 4 bullet points go in that letter, at least that we know of right now, which are importance of filling board seats and having an efficient training process. A note that we're undergoing a shift in the way that we review cases, the importance of filling the unfilled staff positions in the agency, and of course the fact that having unfilled staff positions, especially in the policy area, contributes to it being difficult for the board to perform trend and staff analysis, and bringing up, of course, that it's very difficult working with the city to get those positions filled expediently. Further, I would encourage board members to email me anything that comes to their minds reviewing the IMR, and I can add those to the letter. And we should put a deadline on that. Ms. Gooch, do you know off the top of your head when we need to get this letter out by? It's fairly quickly, if I remember right.
Chair French, Member Crawford, it is due November 30th, and I had asked your chair to ensure that for your special meeting Monday night, this was also an item so that you all could regroup and have time over the weekend to digest the IMR, because it was just filed yesterday. So I hope it is a fast turnaround, but with the weekend in between, you guys have time.
Yeah, so let's say I would like board members to get me anything for that letter by Saturday night, which will give me time to have it drafted to approve on Monday.
That's a motion. Is there, I'll second it. Is there any more discussion on this?
I
will,
don't understand.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Member Warto.
I don't understand one issue. Hasn't the comment period on the IMR expired?
Did you hear that?
I think
Go ahead, or Member Crawford, either one.
I was going to say Ms. Gooch might give you a more exact answer, but I think part of the confusion is there's kind of multiple comment periods. We were invited to comment before the draft was released. And I think ultimately, because of attorney-client privilege issues, Ms. Gooch could probably explain that better. They're very stingy about who sees the draft before it's published. I did that just because I've before been assigned as the liaison for that purpose. I did not make any recommendations at that point. And that's basically kind of an opportunity to catch like errors, basically, or inaccuracies in the IMR before it's published. Now that it's been published, there's going to be a hearing to discuss it. So this is kind of our opportunity to get stuff in writing before that hearing comes up. Hopefully that was generally correct, Ms. Gooch.
Chair French, Member Crawford, yes, that was wonderful.
Or one thing that hasn't been mentioned, there were some direct criticisms of the board.
Yes.
Among other things, there were criticisms of our statements in open meetings.
Yes. Very true. So I would say any board member, like Member Warchell, we're bringing out those things. Any of those issues, you can reach out to Member Crawford and our counselor, and to me, because I will be reaching out to you also, Member Crawford, on, you know, I know we can't address everything, but there are some important issues that I think that we need to discuss, like the review of cases that you had brought up and how we're currently doing it. So I think those, any comments, any suggestions, let's get those to Member Crawford. You said by Saturday?
Yeah, I'm going to say by Saturday night. If you get them to me Sunday, I will probably get them in, but no promises at that point.
Okay. Yeah. All right, because I just want to acknowledge Member Wartell, because he is in the Mid-Atlantic. He has to, there's not an 800 number, so he is listening to our meeting. And so when he has a comment, I will be putting it so that you all can hear it. So I just want to acknowledge that we did hear you, Member Wartell, and those are issues too. So.
Thanks.
Okay, with that, we have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? If not, Member Varela, would you take the roll?
Member Crawford,
Yes.
Member French,
Yes.
Member Jackson,
Yes.
Member Nixon,
Yes.
Member Rayner,
Yes.
Member, yep, that motion passed unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll move on to item 10D. Serious use of force and OIS streamlined data process. Member Nixon?
I really, Chairman French, and board, I really don't have anything to report other than our link is there, the data is there, and I've noticed that the data has been populated, so they continue to populate it. So it looks like the streamlined process is working. You know, we'll go through a couple of more cycles on meetings and stuff, and in the event, I think the next litmus test really is whether or not there's ad hoc data that can be added to that one single link. And I think there can be. It's just whenever the occasion comes up where we're asking for some more information or something, it can be placed for a serious use of force type cases on that particular link for us. So seems to be working. Any questions?
It does seem to be working, Member Nixon, and just for the board's knowledge, APD is saying they're redacting it. We're hearing 3 cases on Monday because those are the only 3 that are ready. And I want to give each board member sufficient time to review all the information, and we do need those OBDRs before, I hope I did that right, before we actually have all the information that I believe necessary. So as soon as Executive Director Ewing has been telling me when they put the information in there, and because they only had 3 ready, we're going to hear those 3 on Monday. And we're just going to keep biting away at this list, chopping away at this list until we can get completely caught up. But we do have to depend on APD getting that redacted information to us. So I just want to say thank you, Member Nixon. It's been a long time coming ever since I've been on this board. You know, ever since I've chaired, I've had different members say, I can't find this information. It is ridiculous. So thank you for streamlining it for us because it is a lot easier. So thank you. So we'll move on with that to approval of the 2022 January to June semi-annual report. Executive Director Ewing.
Chair French, I do believe there was an item before that, the annual training status update from Councilor.
Oh, yes, there is. Sorry. Yeah, and annual training status update. That's Councilor Gooch and Member Wartel.
Chair French, if it's better for Member Wartel, I can start. And if you'd like to add on, he's welcome to, if that's fine with the board.
He just said, go ahead, Councilor
Okay.
Gooch.
All right, thank you. So I had sent an email to everyone about some dates of trying to put together some live trainings on the 3 blocks that I would like to give to you all that have been approved by the monitor. And I don't need to take time tonight, but if you all could please get back to me about that, I'm going to do a majority wins. These are initial trainings that our newest member, I highly encourage attend. So please make sure you check those dates and times out if we need to look further out. I know it's the holidays, but I'd like to get those scheduled so that we can get them recorded so that as there's onboarding of new members, they have the newest ordinance, the current CASA, the current policies and procedures for their trainings. There will be a 4th that I need to do, and that one will be when each board member finishes all of the updated trainings along the way. All of the existing board members that have completed their initial training are welcome to utilize any of these trainings for their required annual continuing trainings. You do not have to by any means. We are still working actively with the city regarding the use of force training that will be presented live to the board. There's also Power DMS, where it's my understanding a lot of the trainings are now available for you all. And there are a couple that are still being created, but I think we've made excellent progress. I think Member Wartel, who has done these trainings, drafted the trainings, and sat through all of the trainings for you all, is a really helpful point of view, if nothing else, to tell us if it's useful. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but otherwise, let's just please get some schedules put together so we can get these implemented and presented to y'all.
Member Wartel, did you have anything to add to that?
No, Ms. Gooch did a great job.
Okay, all right, he said no. I will ask the board members to please respond to Ms. Gooch on what days you're available. She's going to give them at her office. Executive Director Ewing, I would request that we get an updated spreadsheet on where we are. And also board members, if you need to do your ride-alongs, there is a certain person that you talk to. And I can send you everybody her email address, or our executive director can do that for the ride-alongs. And believe me, it takes a while because I've been trying to get mine done for the last 4 or 5 months. So, and I'm not saying it's completely APD's fault. One had to be canceled because of a personal reason, but I'm saying we need to look at that spreadsheet and see what classes we need to take and get that updated. We also, I will say, we do have a new person monitoring us right now, and a new monitor that's coming in. It will no longer be Mr. Giaquinto. And so I want to make sure that our spreadsheet is updated for him, and that if for anyone who hasn't done their training, to please start those, because we've got to get those done. And with that, we'll move on to our next one. Just drop my pen. But okay, approval of the 2022 semi-annual, well, let me say January through June semi-annual report.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair French. Chair French, members of the board, last month we sent you all a link. We sent it a couple of times, and I believe the PDF to the, or maybe just the link, to the copy of the January through June 2022 semi-annual report, so that you would have the month between October and now to review and approve it. I'm here today to basically ask that the board give their approval to that semi-annual report so that we can then pass it on to City Council for their approval process.
Well, I will say before we move into the discussion or have a motion, I did get into there once. I've been trying to get back into there for the last 5 or 6 minutes because I did have several questions, but I can't access it. It takes me to the share drive. And once I get there, I put in my current, because they just made me change my password. I put in my current password and it will not let me in. So I don't know if the rest of the board members had trouble accessing it. I know that our director Ewing said if you do, send her an email and let her know, but I certainly, I can't get into it right now, and I had several questions. Is there any way that you could put it up and screen share? Because it was just the first few pages that I had questions on. Well, do we need a motion? Let's have a motion first to approve the semi-annual report.
So moved.
We have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Okay, Director Ewing, can you pull it up on the screen?
I should be able to see that now.
Okay. Okay, scroll back up, will you? Let's see, it was just the first. Okay. Let's see. It was the one where it listed all the investigations. Let's see. Okay, use of force. Let's see.
Was it as far up as the?
No, right there. Let's stop right there. Okay. So my question is 120, it says 120 APD employees were identified and completed complaint investigations. Then it says 93 complaints were identified and completed investigations. I don't care. I'm not questioning about their ethnicity or their race. So are those different cases?
So the number of complainants, some of them have multiple cases, some of them have just the one. Some people file multiple complaints or are repeat complaint filers. So those are not always separate cases. I think you'll see further up where my arrow is pointing, the agency opened 141 complaint investigations. So that's the number of total investigations. Of those 141 complaint investigations, there were 93 different complainants. And in those 141 complaints, there were 120 different APD employees identified.
Okay, so again, where it says down a little further, 93 complaints were identified. Okay, they said 6 filed complaints anonymously, but it says they were identified in completed investigations. So if the complainant is anonymous, how do you complete an investigation?
And what I can tell you is we have to go on what information they provide. If they provide us with any contact information, we can certainly try to call them back. More often, all we can do is identify as much information about the officer as exists from the complaint and review the case, particularly the OBRD footage. Because quite frankly, quite often what I've seen, and I do believe the data backs this up, review of OBRD footage frequently is what allows us to say that a complaint is unfounded. That anonymous complainant Jane Doe said that the officer cussed her a blue streak, called her everything but a child of God, and was deeply unprofessional. And we can go back to OBRD video of Officer Joe Schmo and see, well, actually, the officer didn't call her any names. The officer used only professional language, did not swear at all. And we can find that unfounded, even if the person is anonymous and does not provide us information to find them. I know that in one anonymous complaint that I personally took very early in I think it may have been my first week, the person did stay on for a good long time. She refused to give any identifying information, but gave enough information that we could identify the officers. And that's exactly how the rest of that investigation would proceed.
Okay, that's what I wanted to understand. When the complainant is anonymous, it doesn't mean that you didn't interview them. It just means they wouldn't give their name.
Generally, it means that they didn't give their name. Sometimes we're not able to interview them. If they've mailed in an anonymous form and don't give us any way to reach them, we may not be able to interview them. But if it's somebody who calls in or comes to the window and wants to give their complaint, we can get information from them. But if they don't want to give us information to follow back up, we just have to go with what's in the complaint for their side and otherwise rely on video footage and other documentation.
Okay. All right. I had some more questions, but I won't belabor it right now. We can just move. Could you scroll down a little bit more? Because I'm not able to open the document today so I can get my questions. Okay, further down. Keep going, Deidre. I think where it had the graph. Okay, right there, sustained, non-sustained. Let's see. Okay, on the no, let me just, and I can go over a lot of these just with you. I'm not saying I'm not going to approve it. How many duplicate complaints already assigned a CPC number? Do they give us the statistics on that? Because I can't.
I don't remember having that broken out. That is something I may be able to look into separately with a little time.
Okay. We have so many things to cover. I will go over my questions. I just had questions. It wasn't that I didn't agree with it. It was just questions on how did you get to this figure, or how did you come up with this sum? And so we can just do that at a later time. Deidre, I'll go through it with you. Okay. So is there any more discussion or questions? If not, Ms. Barella, will you take the roll?
Member Crawford,
Yes.
Member French,
Yes.
Member Jackson,
Yes.
Member Nixon,
Yes.
Member Rayner.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passed unanimously.
Before I move on to the next item, does anybody on the board need a 5-minute break? Or do you want to move on? I don't hear anything from anybody, so let's move on. Okay, the semi-annual audit. Director Ewing, I think we had discussed this before. The only thing that I wanted to say is that the ordinance says that we would do an audit of the cases semi-annually. And we had put it in policy and procedures that we wanted an outside agency that had the ability and the knowledge to do the audit, because we as board members don't have the knowledge or expertise or training to actually do a real audit on these cases. And so my question is, you and I had talked before, and you were going to look into the funding. Well, it has to be done because the ordinance requires it. The funding for hiring somebody to do it. And I don't think it's going to be very many. I think it's 10% is what they said, but we said a minimum of 3. So that's probably what it will be.
And I do not see that for the current fiscal year that an allocation was made in the budget for an outside auditor to be hired. That is certainly something we can start asking for in the next budgeting process, but I wasn't able to find that allocation had been made for the current fiscal year.
And it may not have been, but I'm sure we can move money around. So have you looked at any of the line items where we're not using the funding, that you could go to whoever the powers may be to say, can I use this money for this? I mean, just like when the city has vacancies, they have all this money for vacancies. I think that they move it around so they can use it in other places. And have vacancies.
I had not had that conversation with our budget analyst. I have some other things I need to talk to her about, and I will add that to the list for that conversation.
Okay, just see if we can use our vacant money, because we have several vacancies, to see if we can get this done. Because the ordinance came out in April, so I'm sure we're going to have an audit for the end of the year, because it's semi-annual. So we're going to have one maybe starting in January, and the new budget doesn't go into effect till next July. So I don't think we can wait till then. So look into that, will you, and then update me before the next meeting, or let's talk about it. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I can do that.
I'll make a note. Will you make a note of that for our next meeting?
Just did.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next one is the CPOA board job description. Member Nixon and Member Rayner have already done it. And as I said at the last meeting, I didn't want it to be just generic. I mean, I wanted to see if other people at the NACO had job descriptions. Member Rayner said he wasn't able to find any. I have not reached out to the ones that I said I was going to, but our new monitor said that he would look into that because I believe he does Detroit, and get back with me on that. The last time I spoke to him, he said he had not had an opportunity to do that. So we will try to get this job description done before the end of the year. And hopefully by our January meeting, we will have either we're just going to go with the current one that they've done. If we can't find another one to use, or to not use, another one to look at how they're doing that, since this is the first time that City Council has ever required this of us. And I don't want us to be so specific we, pin ourselves into a corner, but neither do I want it to be so generic. It doesn't look that our duties are important. So, but I'm certainly open for any discussion or any recommendations on that. Member Rayner or Member Nixon, did you have any? That's just you two are in charge of this project. That was just my personal thoughts on it.
I agree with what you're saying, Patty.
Okay. Member Nixon?
I don't, we're good. We're done with it. So just waiting to hear feedback. We're good.
Okay. You're good with okay. I like the one that you guys had. I just wanted to see, since we've never had to do it before, compare it to something else. And if there's nothing else out there to compare it to, we'll just go with what we have. What you've done so far, okay? So let's move on to the next item. I recommend the changes to the CASA. Ms. Gooch?
Thank you, Chair French and members of the board. Member Wartell and I had it, well, he tried to be there. He valiantly tried to be there, had a meeting with the city attorney about where these discussions are and the idea that the board would like the CPA somehow addressed through those proposed CASA amendments. The city is looking into it, the idea, and is supposed to be in touch with us once there's a formal position taken, but we have started that dialogue, and I'm hopeful that it will help the board, whether it happens through CASA or some other way, get the CPA list of classes reduced in a way that makes it at least more feasible for the short term for board members.
Member Wartell, did you have anything else to add on that?
Yes, we have been amazingly ineffectual at getting this done up to now. I hope we can manage it in the future.
Did everyone hear that? All right. Okay, thank you, Member Wartell. Let's move on. Update requests from, I don't have any update requests. Do any of the board members have anything they've requested and they want to update on the status? Member Rayner.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask about the hard copy of the SOPs. Have we gotten any further on that?
I believe that's in Director Ewing's report. That
It
she's gonna.
is. I can answer the question now if you would prefer, but I did plan on addressing that in my report.
Well,
Thank
since
you.
go ahead and answer it now.
Okay, so what the feedback we got from APD was that they will not, it's not logistically possible for them to get us a hard copy of the SOPs. They were, however, willing to provide the board with training on the use of Power DMS to make SOPs that you're looking for easier to find. But they said that it wasn't going to be logistically possible for them to put together a binder of hard copies of all of the published SOPs.
And why?
Logistically meaning their printer doesn't work? I don't understand. It's just paper and a notebook.
That is the entirety of the information I have, it's not going to be logistically possible. I can ask for more information if you would like me to see if they can give us more information on why, but that is what they told us.
Yeah, I'd like to understand what logistically possible means, because people print things every day without any kind of problem. So logistically possible means nothing. That doesn't mean anything.
And I will tell you, when I started with APD, we always had to keep a hard copy, and I don't understand that either. But until that happens, Director Ewing, when we see these cases come before us, like the sustained cases, especially the sustained cases, if they're going to say that an officer violated a certain SOP and we don't have that SOP available to us, and sometimes it's a prior SOP, the SOP has been revised since then, we need a copy of how so, what SOP did they violate and how did they violate it? And the only way we can apply it is if we know exactly what that SOP says. So I don't want to put more work on the agency, but we need to know on those sustained cases, if we can't get a hard copy, what did they violate so that we can read. We can't just go and say, well, they violated SOP 1-1-1-B, so we're going to sustain that. What is that?
Well, and I can tell you that we can, since they have made the offer to provide the additional training on use of Power DMS, we can ask that training include an explanation of how to use Power DMS to go back to prior archived versions of the SOPs.
Here's my problem. I don't want training on Power DMS. That's not what I want. It's not using the Power DMS. That is logistically not feasible for me myself. I have a small little laptop and I cannot look at the SOPs as well as look at the reports on this 12-inch screen and be effective. So like it's not a matter of training on Power DMS. It is a matter of efficiency and effectiveness that I'm running into. And so that doesn't help me. That is not helpful at all. That's not what I want. I don't need a training on how to use Power DMS.
I understand. I'm
Sorry.
sorry, Member Crawford, what did you want to say?
I was just going to say, I maybe just want to express, I don't know that I'm going to defend the logistically impractical, but I do think that you should understand, just from doing policies and procedures review, it's probably, I would say it depends on the month, 30 to 100 pages of new policy per month. So if you have a printed copy, it's going to be out of date really quickly. I'm not sure what the total page count is. I would just like do the expectation setting that if you have a printed copy, it's going to be one version and it's going to be out of date for some of the policies pretty quickly.
Well aware of that, and that I'm willing to work with. I'm not asking for one every week. I'm asking for one, pick a time, print it out, and if it becomes obsolete, I expect it to go obsolete over time, and I'd like to see at what point it becomes no longer useful, because right now this is, as far as I'm concerned, pretty much unworkable. Maybe the rest of you guys are fine with it, but especially if I'm going to be on the policy subcommittee, being able to have something here next to me that I can mark up and write and put notes in, as opposed to going to this Power DMS tool, is infinitely better for my style. And I find it a little insulting to say logistically infeasible. That is untrue. That's untrue. It's just printing paper. So I'm pretty frustrated with this. That one, it took so long to get an answer, a stonewalling answer, and not even a satisfactory one at that.
Thank you, Member Rayner. And I will say that we did have a hard copy, of course, it's much bigger now. Every time after the policy is vetted, approved, voted on, everything, we would get a hard copy of the revised version. And then, of course, you would take the old one out of your notebook and insert the revised version on each policy. So you're right, it can be done, and I understand that. Otherwise, like I said, we're going to have to ask when we get these sustained cases, and we don't get a lot of them, to also provide us the SOP that you're saying the officer violated, so that we can see and say whether he did or whether he didn't by looking at the investigation and the video. Right now, all we have is you giving us what they violated, but we have no idea what that is. And I know how to use Power DMS. We've used it for years. And you're right, they give us a small little computer. And you're right, Member Rayner, you can't go and read that whole SOP and then go back and read the report and compare them together. You can't do it. So I agree. So let's do what we can to make this board effective and efficient. And if that's what a board member needs, we need to know from APD why that they can't have that. So let's move on to, okay, thanks. Let's move on to item 11. Review of cases and approval of recommended discipline on sustained cases. Is there a motion for approval of the recommended discipline, on case 154-22?
So moved.
Is there a second? I'll second it. Any discussion? Member Barella, will you call the roll?
I had a
Member,
quick comment. Sorry,
Sure,
I'll
go
try
ahead.
to be faster with this. This one, I was a little bit concerned. Actually, there's a number of the ones that we have in this sustained that make me a little anxious. This one, 154-22, was the one, I believe, where the officer was using his camera in his own home to record family members. And to me, it seemed like the recommended punishment was light, just because that seems very egregious, intimidating, a number of things that I felt like the recommended discipline was light compared to what I was seeing on the video.
I will
If
say
I may
that
respond?
yeah, go ahead.
The recommended discipline, Member Rayner, Chair French, and other members, came from what level of violation the particular SOP the officer was found to have violated is, and what the typical recommendation is for that SOP. It's not something that came out of full cloth. That is the department ranks that SOP, and so that's formula we are stuck with.
But there is a minimum and a maximum, right?
There is a minimum, there is a maximum. Generally, our process is to provide a recommendation of what the recommendation is. I'm sorry, I'm not articulating. There is a minimum, there is a maximum. The recommendation rarely comes in at minimum or maximum because it is usually a set recommendation within the range based on the person's prior history. And so that's where the recommendation came in, based on the prior history information we have.
So I understand that. My issue with this, though, is I felt like regardless of prior history, and I think there's a case later on where there's prior history and it was still, I believe, lower than what I would think. But in this case in particular, I felt that the misuse of this property was especially egregious because of the circumstances. So I understand, I read through all that and I saw that, and I thought to myself, if an officer is going to be using his camera in his own home to intimidate or whatever you want to call it, that should not be considered like, well, since this is your first one, sometimes your first violation is egregious, and that's what I felt like on this one.
I understand.
So my question is, Director Ewing, I know the SOP, and it's like you said, is this the first occurrence, second occurrence, third occurrence? So what Member Rayner is saying, what I understand is, on some of these, it isn't their first occurrence. So on those, and I don't know which case he's talking about, do we always still just go on the minimum?
I want to be clear, the presumptive level we required was not the minimum.
Okay.
Within the range, it was in the middle of the range, and we recommend what the presumptive level is for the level of offense and the history, and it usually comes in the middle of the range from what I've seen. I don't believe I've seen us in the 3 months I've been doing this recommend the very lowest level often or ever, and I don't believe I've seen the presumptive level of punishment be the top of the range either. It usually comes in the middle of the allowable range.
Okay. All right. Is there any more discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Member Burrow?
Member Crawford,
Yes.
Member French,
Yes.
Member Jackson,
Yes.
Member Rayner,
No.
Member Nixon.
No.
That motion passed on a vote of 3-2.
Okay. We'll move on to case 140-22, sustained and unfounded. Is there a motion for approval of the recommended discipline?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Do I see any hands? No?
No.
Okay, Member Farella, will you call the roll? Excuse me, not member, Miss Farella, will you call the roll?
Yes. Member Crawford,
Yes.
Member French,
Yes.
Member Jackson,
Yes.
Member Nixon,
Yes.
Member Rayner.
Yes.
Thank you. And that motion passed unanimously.
Thank you. Let's move on to case 135-22, sustained violations not based on original complaint. Do we have a motion for approval of the recommended discipline?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
So this is another one I had kind of a problem with. I felt like the police service aide failed on multiple levels, and it could have been a situation that could have gotten pretty hairy. And I just felt like, again, the discipline was light because there was a gun was involved, maybe not shown, but was apparently on the scene, and nobody was told of that. And a few other things, I can't remember. I've got some notes. My handwriting's bad, but it just seemed like that could have gone real bad, real fast. And the PSA had information that was not shared, which almost seemed like the person wasn't quite sure what their job was. And so that one really bothered me as well.
Chair French.
You're muted, sir.
There we go. Okay, I'm sorry. So the other issue that I have with this case too, I agree with Member Rayner that the PSA, a lot could have gone wrong real fast. But my issue is, Member Crawford, remember during our meetings, no, maybe you weren't in, I think it was during the PPRB, Director Ewing, we have discussed about PSAs going to these type of accidents. And they're saying that PSAs have authority to go to these type of accidents if their sergeant or their lieutenant or whoever authorizes it. But I think that PSAs are not qualified, and this is a prime example of why you should have an officer, and especially when there's injuries. Because they're saying that one person was taken to the hospital. I just feel like there's a lack of experience and knowledge to have PSAs do these type of reports. So my complaint isn't so much with the PSA, is with the authorization from the commanding officer to let a PSA handle this type of case. That's my complaint. And so I think, Member Crawford, we need to address that with recommendations to APD, because it was discussed a lot. I think Director, you were in some of those meetings about PSAs doing these type of reports, and let's make a recommendation. Anytime it's more than a fender bender, we need an officer to take the report, and use this as a prime example, because this could have gone bad real fast.
I don't know. I refrained from making a speech on 154-22, but maybe I'll make that speech now. I think both of these complaints are excellent cases where a policy recommendation could likely be made to address a future incident. In 154-22, that would maybe be to introduce a new policy against the use of department equipment in the intimidation of family members, which has a higher rating on the sanction scale. In this case, that might have to do with what traffic accident situations PSAs can be dispatched to, which is kind of a recurring source of complaints to this board. Both excellent policy recommendations. To be totally frank, I'm kind of keeping my head above water right now, keeping up on review of PPRB approved policies. So I don't know that I have the time to take on those policy recommendations, but I would definitely recommend that someone look into drafting those. This has come up in the IMR in this it comes up in the IMR basically every single time for the last several years at least. This board is supposed to spend at least half of its time on analysis and policy. And in practice, we spend only a very small portion of our time on analysis and policy. And I think these sorts of things sort of highlight the fact that the board is limiting its own potential efficacy by having so little focus on policy, right? We spend a lot of time considering complaints, but when it comes to complaints, we can only ever deal with things that have already happened. Policy is our opportunity to actually improve the situation going forward for the people of Albuquerque. And this is kind of a case study there. Okay, that's the end of my speech.
Okay, and I agree that these are a perfect opportunity to look at policy, but I also believe that we're called oversight for a reason. And the oversight is to look into these investigations and question them just like we're doing here. So I agree too, Jesse, but we need to take those opportunities when we see things like this. Yeah, it's our duty, as Member Raynard is saying, that's our duty to look into this. So let's, I'm not sure who or how we can make that recommendation, Member Crawford, but I think we definitely need to make recommendations, and we can go back. Director Ewing, maybe you can help us with those, and we can discuss it. I don't know, or maybe Counselor Gooch. I'm not sure who the appropriate person would be to make those policy recommendations, but I definitely think that the one for the 154, which one is it? 154.22 and 140.22 definitely need to be addressed. So let me make a note of that. And Member Raynard, we will be getting with you also, whoever takes that on to make that policy change. Okay, a recommendation. Let me just pull that, because that's all we can do is make a recommendation. And sometimes, we can't force APD to change any policies. We can only recommend them.
And I do believe there is a website or app which the department has set up that would allow us to go in and make recommendations that, for instance, the misuse of department equipment policy have an additional clause added with a higher sanction level for misappropriating department equipment to abuse or intimidate a household member. And I think that may be the best way for us to do that. And I can coordinate with Member Crawford to get that done.
I'm going to raise a quick question about that, actually, because Chair French sent a link to that recently. And I don't know if anyone has the answer, but I have been wary of using that because the ordinance imposes an obligation on the chief of police to respond to policy recommendations when they come from the board. And I have had a feeling that things that are typed into that form probably don't go to the chief, and so may not trigger the chief's obligation to respond to us. If anyone has an answer to that question, I'd be curious. And if not, I think that's something we should figure out. That's the reason I haven't used that so far.
I do not know the answer to that question, but I can certainly confer with Ms. Galloway and find out.
And in terms of 154.22, based off of what Jesse was saying earlier, I can work on that one. I'm not as clear. That one I'm a little bit more clear on what I like, what I'm feeling on that one than the 135.22. So I can definitely take a stab at that, or work with you, Ms. Ewing, to help figure out, if you want me to try, you know what I mean? Like, we can work together on 154.22.
Well, I would say that I would like our policy recommendations to be on letterhead and sent straight to the chief, because he does have a timeline to respond to us. So I believe that's how it is. So with any policy change, let's put it on letterhead. And I don't care if you use the format in the letter, Director Ewing, we might use that format, but we definitely need to send it directly to the chief on our letterhead. Ms. Gooch, do you have any recommendations on that?
Chair French, members of the board, I do not. I do think that a letter may make it very clear if there's any ambiguity as to who gets what, but I also think it would be helpful for the board and the public to know with the online system who gets it and who monitors it.
Okay. All right, I believe we have a motion and a second on the floor. Is that correct, Ms. Burrell?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and it's 135-22?
Correct.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? Okay, Ms. Barella, will you call the roll?
Member Crawford,
Yes.
Member French,
Yes.
Member Jackson,
Yes.
Member Nixon,
Yes.
Member Rayner.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passed unanimously.
Okay, thank you. And I'll go on to 128-22. Sustain, exonerated, not sustained, and unfounded. Approval recommend discipline on this case. Is there a motion to approve the discipline?
Was this?
128-22. Mhm.
So moved.
Is there,
Second.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Yeah. Was this, I believe this is the one where the officer was making fun of the
That's correct. Yep.
person? And if I remember correctly, looking at this, it says this was a second offense at level 7.
He has multiple offenses. This is the
Multiple
one.
offenses. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's getting a written reprimand or a minimum written reprimand or a max of 8 hours.
Right. And I Ms. Ewing, maybe you can help me out because the paragraph above that or below it says something about there is no minimum, but yet that shows a minimum as being the written record. It's a little bit confusing in the what is it, DAP or whatever it's called? Because there's the box that says minimum shows WR, but then the words say there is no minimum.
Apologies, technical issue. That I'm going to be frank, I'm not entirely clear on. Give me one moment to. I'm sorry, I'm just having a hard time pulling up things that I need this evening.
While you're doing that, I'll just say, based off of what I read, there's numerous things that have gone wrong with this officer. One level 7, several level 6s. This would be the second level 7, and a written reprimand seems light to me. It just says several level 6s, and I guess I could scroll up and find them. I don't know, but I think this is something that needs to be addressed, I think, with a little bit more than just a written.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you because I'm like saying, okay, so this behavior, this is a second time that this officer's done this. And of course, you know, we're in desperate need of officers in Albuquerque, but I'm just thinking of how the public feels if you're the person who's in law enforcement, who's supposed to protect and serve, is mocking you or maybe not taking a situation seriously, how that makes a taxpayer feel. And where is I don't know, so this would be like 2 offenses. When do we get to the point, if this is a pattern? Because I'm saying after you do the same thing twice, that you're kind of formulating a pattern. So I'm trying to understand the logic of the discipline or the recommendation thereof.
Okay.
It's guidelines. I know you're following guidelines. Okay.
Actually, the question I was preparing to ask is there were 2 officers in this one. I'm sorry, can you remind me which officer you're speaking of?
This would be Officer M. Officer S was exonerated, I believe, or unfounded. I don't remember, but also Officer M is the one we're talking about.
Thank you.
And, you know, I don't know if I'm going to quite make this a motion, but I want to kind of keep our eyes on concrete steps that we can take, right? I do believe the board, I'm a little confused since the ordinance changed, but I think I'm right when I say that the board has the power to recommend that a higher level of discipline be imposed. I think not beyond the maximum in the sanctions chart, if nothing else, because APD definitely wouldn't follow that recommendation, but I think we do have the power to raise the disciplinary recommendation.
I agree. But I believe the motion right now is to accept, so it would have to, I believe, fail first. I don't know Robert's Rules of Order as well as I probably should, but that's how it works, right?
Or somebody can withdraw their motion.
I think I moved it, so I'll withdraw the motion.
Is that correct, Councilor Gooch?
Chair French, members of the board, yes, but you need to make a new motion if you want to continue discussion.
Right. So with that, I do need somebody to make a new motion and a second, and then we can further the discussion.
So moved.
What is the motion?
Is the motion be to amend or change the discipline, the recommended discipline?
I'm going to drag out my making a motion here because I am finding the chart of sanctions in the policy right now, and I'm turning my head sideways because that's which way. Oh, right, I can make my PDF reader do that. Okay. Am I correct that this is a level 7 offense and this is the second offense?
Yes.
That is my recollection, yes.
So taking a look at the chart of sanctions, given what I feel to be kind of the severity of it being a second incident of very similar and very concerning behavior, I would like to move that the board recommend that the disciplinary recommendation be 8 hours suspension, which is the maximum for a second offense of a class 7 on the chart of sanctions.
I think they listed it as a class 6.
Well, it's listed as a class 7.
Class 7. And to go back to the question I was asked earlier about there being no minimum, looking at the chart of sanctions, when you look at the chart of sanctions in SOP 3-46, each offense has, for each level, you've got a minimum, a presumptive, and a maximum sanction. So in the box for second offense on a level 7, there's nothing in the minimum square. There's only something in the presumptive and the maximum. So effectively, under normal human logic, the minimum and the presumptive mesh together, and the presumptive is the very lowest it can go, but there's nothing lower in the minimum sanction box, just to clarify what I was being asked earlier.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That makes sense.
Okay, what was your motion again, Jesse? I'm sorry.
My motion is to recommend an 8-hour suspension, which is the maximum on the chart of sanctions. It's also just kind of the way the chart usually works. That's basically one step up from a written reprimand, which was the agency's recommendation, is an 8-hour suspension.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have
So,
a motion.
sorry, was that Member Crawford's motion and second by Nixon, or a motion by Nixon and a second by Rayner?
Motion was by Crawford, second by Nixon.
Thank you. Thank you, Member Nixon.
Okay, so, I just to make this short and sweet, we're on 128-22, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
if you look at the second disciplinary action packet, because I keep looking at this and it says SOP violations, and maybe I'm reading this wrong, but it says class 6. Am I?
It's 2 different officers.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Are you Officer M? This would be Officer M.
Okay, no, I was looking at Officer S, correct. Okay, thank you, guys. Okay, thank you for that clarification. I was beginning to think it was getting late in my eyes, playing tricks on me. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? Ms. Varela, will you take the roll?
Member Crawford,
Yes.
Member French,
Yes.
Member Jackson,
Yes.
Member Nixon,
Yes.
Member Rayner.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you. Let's move on to 141-22. Is there a motion to approve the recommended discipline on the sustained as exonerated and unfounded case 141-22?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
So this one, I felt like, and I don't know if we can do this, but I felt like after watching this video, I felt this officer did his absolute best. It was as professional as he could be. He knew these people by name, so he had been to this residence a number of times. And I just feel like, I'm not sure if we can go down to, I think it's recommended as a written, but I think it's more likely a verbal, because what he ultimately didn't do was this. It's a little, I'm not going to fight hard on this, but he did not read Miranda rights, but at the same time, everything else that went on in that situation, I think he handled like as well as you possibly could. It was a stressful situation. And I mean, both officers, actually, there were two officers who dealt with the young lady, and I thought they both did about as good a job as you could ask for.
If I may,
Please.
my only caution on the downward departure is failure to read Miranda rights is something that implicates somebody's constitutional rights. And I do believe that's why the presumption comes where it does, because it has an implication for constitutional policing.
And that's my one rub, is exactly that. I understand it's kind of a big hiccup, and I just felt like I said, I won't fight hard for this, but I felt like when you watch that video, what was going on and everything that was going on, I can understand how that could get missed. It's a big miss. And in some ways, I kind of feel like maybe it's kind of like that PSA that we were talking about earlier, where, it's kind of a big deal, but at the same time, the amount of stress, I mean, I was going to have a conniption fit just watching everything that was going on there. So I just wanted to say, I won't fight hard to get this dropped down from what it is.
I actually agree with you a lot, but Miranda is a big deal. Like you can't, no matter how stressed you are, that's your job. Like, I totally agree with you. When I saw it, I was like, you almost want to shake the guy's hand. He did such a great job, but that's a pretty big legal miss. Like, there has to be some kind of pretty good repercussion for that, in my opinion.
Agreed. Yeah.
The implications of a missing a Miranda rights, it reminds me of, let's say you catch somebody red-handed killing a child or molesting someone or doing something like that, and then he's dead right, you got him, gonna arrest him, and then you don't read the Miranda rights, so he gets off from a technicality. That's egregious. That's bad. So in that, it has to be habitual, to where there are certain things that need to kick in, like Miranda rights is kind of a no-brainer. If you're going to be slapping the cuffs on someone, somebody's got to whip out, even if you got to whip out the card and read it, who cares? But you have to go down that right. That is literally, it's egregious in that is something that should be done day one coming out of the academy. You may not be able to shoot straight, but you should know the doggone Miranda rights, because you can't let someone get off for that. So that's why I'm kind of like, get what you get. So it's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I get that. And yeah, I don't have anything else to say about it.
Chair French, you're muted.
I looked at it and I agree with you. But the officer did say during the investigation that the question, she didn't remember if she read them or not, but the questions she was asking required that she read the person that was being arrested their Miranda rights. So she admitted guilt. So there was nothing we could do about that, but I agree with you, But so we have to, I think I'm going to go with the motion that's on the floor. Is there any more discussion? If not, Ms. Barella, will you take the roll?
Member Crawford,
Yes.
Member French,
Yes.
Member Jackson,
Yes.
Member Nixon,
Yes.
Member Rayner.
No.
Thank you. And that motion passed 4-1.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to item 12. There were no non-concurrence cases that we had this month. So we'll move on to item 13, reports from subcommittee, policy and review committee. Member Crawford?
Yeah, we pretty much already covered my report as far as the policies, but I do want to take this opportunity to make sure the whole board knows we changed our meeting time. We used to meet at 4:30 on the first Thursday of the month. It just pushed back an hour to 5:30 the first Thursday of the month.
Thank you. Okay. We'll move on to item 14, reports from city department. Let me look and see who's here. I don't believe I see anybody from APD. Is that correct, Ms. Barella? Or member, Director Ewing, do you guys see anybody from APD?
No, neither Commander Landavazo nor Commander Norris are here, and I haven't seen any requests to be admitted from them.
Okay, then we'll move on to C, City Council, Chris Sylvan.
Thank you, Chair French, Honorable Board. Chris Sylvan, Albuquerque City Council. My update for the City Council is just two items. On October 17th, the item OC 22-20, that's the appointment of Ms. Angela Luce to the CPOA board, and she's here tonight. So that was the only item that would be of interest to this board at that City Council meeting. On the November 7th City Council meeting, which was this past Monday, M-22-6, asking the New Mexico legislature to reinstate qualified immunity, was discussed, and the councilors decided to defer that to the December 5th meeting. So that is my report for City Council. Stand for any questions, but before I say that, I do need to tell you that the rest of the City Council meetings will be on Zoom for the remainder of the year. So I think there's 3 left, and those will not be in person. They will be on Zoom. So now I stand for questions.
Is that due to an outbreak of COVID?
Chair French, Honorable Board. Yeah, that's to prevent, since we're getting to the cold and flu season, it's just precautions to be safe.
Thank you. Member Nixon, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's okay. Chris, when we talk about qualified immunity, I know that at the state level, the governor's office, they suspended qualified immunity. So if the city's voting on this, and let's say it goes back, what is that implication like? So we say qualified immunity at the city level, but at the state level, it's like no qualified immunity.
Chair French, Board Member Nixon, I probably spoke too fast when I was giving that. It's a memorial, and what a memorial does is it addresses a different body to start discussing that. So the city is not proposing doing that. It's more of a recommendation to the state that they change their
That makes
policy.
sense. All right. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, sure.
Are there any more questions? All right, then we'll move on to Public Safety Committee. Chris, you're on again.
Okay, we have not had a Public Safety Committee meeting for several bites at the apple, so hopefully there will be one on the 15th of November. That's this Tuesday, and that'll be over Zoom. Slated on that agenda are 2 items: mayor's recommendation of an award for the CODIS DNA testing analysis services. It's a contract. And the second item is R-22-75, which is establishing a tip line program specifically for reporting of illegally used or possessed firearms, and an appropriation to support the program. And I can send the agenda to the board if you'd like to see the agenda. With that, I stand for questions on that one.
Are there any questions? If not, okay, thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chair French.
Sure, and I don't see Pastor Walker, so we'll move on to E, City Attorney. Is Carlos on? I know he was, yes, he is. Carlos?
Good evening, board. I don't really have a lot to report today. As you know, the 16th monitors report was filed yesterday. And it did note 80% operational compliance, which is a 10% increase from IMR 15, which is a good marker of progress. And so happy to report that to the board. I think we've all seen that report at this point. The IMR hearing is on December 6th, Tuesday, December 6th. And I should also note that site visits by the monitoring team commence next week. I think starting with use of force, and then the following week is the remainder of the monitoring team. Other than that, I don't have much else, so I'll stand for questions.
Well, I have two questions. Carlos, due to this being the holiday season, who schedules when the monitoring team meets with the board?
You know, I don't know. That's a good question. Do you have a particular concern regarding scheduling?
I do. They usually make us the end of the week, whatever week they come. We're usually almost last.
Okay.
So I'd like to know what days they're going to be here, what times, and because I want to make sure as many board members can meet with our new monitor.
Okay.
So could you give me some dates and times? And then the other.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, so I think you're referring to Dr. Rickman. He'll be here week after next, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just double check my calendar. That schedule has not been published, but I can. Oh, it's not week after next. Time gets ahead of me. I apologize. That would be the week of December 5th that Dr. Rickman would be out here. And so the schedule, I believe, is still in the works, and I'll reach out to the person at APD, Shania Gallegos, who's been helping compile the schedule, and let her know to work with you. So you indicated, I'm sorry, the end of the week is what you're looking for, or would you like?
I said they usually schedule us the end of the week. So what I would like to know is the week is here, the times available, so that I can send out like a questionnaire to the board saying, what days are you available and what time, so I can get the majority of the people there, the board there, to meet with our new monitor.
Okay. That sounds fair. And I'll reach out and see if we can get that conversation going.
Okay. Yeah. And it's Shania that's doing it?
I think it's Shania.
Okay, good. Okay. And then the second issue on your update is the notification of officers' discipline. Were you going to speak on that? That's on the agenda.
Oh, yes. Thank you for reminding me. There was a question about, because we discussed that at the special meeting last time. I did research the issue, and as I suspected, we can release general outcomes of things, as that's a public record. Let me just double check my notes so that I get this correct. So we can release outcomes, I think. Bear with me for just one moment. Yes, so we can disclose the outcome of discipline, such as discipline or termination to the board. One of the things that we need to be careful with is disclosure of compelled statements. Obviously, we cannot talk about any compelled statements. And then the other things would be any sort of matters of opinion, sort of like findings or anything like that in the discipline. But I think to the heart of the question, the outcome of the discipline, would be perfectly appropriate for disclosure purposes. And so we can let you all know that in advance of the special meetings to save a little time.
So will you ensure that that happens, Carlos?
We can do
Okay.
that.
Okay, please do. Because like I said, if officer is terminated, isn't no need for us to have these long discussions. And it will help,
Sense.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you for reminding me.
Sure. Okay, thank you. And let's move on to CPC. Kelly?
Good evening, Chair French. Good evening, Honorable Board. I hope everyone's doing okay today. We've had a busy month. We've got a lot going on toward the end of the year. And we started off this month. We had our CPC Town Hall 2 weeks ago. And it was a good event where we got a lot of ideas discussed, a lot of interest in future goals. And we cleared up a few misunderstandings. So I think that was a positive meeting. We had an attendance of about 50. This was our first CPC Council Chair meeting in which the public was invited. So we got some good comments on what we could do and what we are doing and what we could do better. So I would say that was a productive meeting. We have also had I had an interview. We generated a little bit of meeting. I did an interview on KZAQ this week, which is the Christian Channel 32. They get a pretty good outreach. So hopefully that will get some people to go in and sign up. I put the website up there and told them to look in, fill out a statement of interest, which is what we call an application. And also Kenneth Armijo, the Foothills Council, did a very well received interview on New Mexico living. So that went pretty well as well. We also have done a lot of cross-pollinating with certain agencies. I've been talking with the senior centers about sending us some people, and also with Maria Wolf of the Downtown and Nob Hill Echo Commission. I've been going on her shows and she's been coming to the meetings, and we have been talking each other up. So that's been a good move. And we've had 2 meetings canceled, unfortunately, this month. One was the Southwest had a guest canceled at the last minute. They only had 3 guests. So that's one of our major focuses to get the Southwest stronger. And the Northeast canceled the meeting on Tuesday because it was election day. So those 2. We have a meeting with the mayor coming up. That's going to be, we're not sure if we're going to make it this year. It is a CASA necessity to meet with the mayor once a year. But we have discussed some possibilities. Rowan and the chairs, Dahlia and the chairs have discussed some possibilities as to whether to do this, when exactly to do it. And they have met with Deidre as well. So we're going to get that scheduled soon. And we have our year-end dinner coming up on December 6th. We've got some ideas for an agenda, what to speak about. It's going to be a working dinner where we talk about the year, where we talk about what we're going to do next year. The location will be the Embassy Suites down in Lomas and I-25. And we're assembling the guest list now. So hopefully that will be a good event where people come out of it and give the council good public relations for next year. That's all I have. I stand for questions.
Are there any questions? I have one question, Kelly. Has anybody from the board or the agency ever done a PowerPoint presentation to the CPCs to let them know what the board does, how we can work parallel, get out to area, what we do, that sort of thing? Has anybody ever did that?
With PowerPoint, I don't believe so. We have had Diane on earlier this year, and also Ed on last year to discuss the CPOA, but not with a PowerPoint. It's a little more informal. So if somebody would like to do that, I'd love to have them. We could do it at all 6 councils if possible.
Well, we do need to get the information out there so that they can get it out to the community, because since they have one in each area,
Right.
on what we're here, what we do, how we help the citizens, how, that we're an oversight, and what an oversight.
It is a sense of confusion, even to APD. I think the younger officers are not exactly sure the differentiation between you and us. So the public obviously doesn't know, but yeah, that would be a good idea.
Okay, I'll speak with Director Ewing and we'll talk about that and get something together.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And let's move on to, were there any questions? I'm sorry. Okay, if not, let's move on to item G, APOA. I put them on, leave them on our agenda. So if the police union ever has an issue or wants to discuss anything with us, I make sure that they're scheduled on our agenda and they have an opportunity to. So with that, we'll move on to H, our executive director's report.
Thank you, Chair French, members. It's a fairly short report and we've covered one of the points already. Since our last meeting, which was October, not September, we've had 19 new complaints, 16 driving complaints, 8 commendations, and we were able to close out and get 28 cases onto the agenda that you've discussed today. In response to Chair French's question from last time, the average caseload number that I gave you was calculated simply by lead investigator McDermott checking in with each of the investigators to see how many cases they had open and calculating the average based on that at the moment. So it was a shot in time. It was a spot in time and not a longitudinal study, just a snapshot in the moment. And finally, as has been discussed at a couple of points today, IMR 16 was published yesterday. I'm still going through the report. There have been some tweaks from what the draft was, but nothing substantially. I will note, because this is something we've been discussing since my interviews, what we would do to try to make sure that we use the reports to bring the department into compliance. We saw the discussion of credibility assessments in the draft of the report and have started trying to incorporate that a bit more where we believe it'd be helpful to the assessment of the case in cases going forward. So that was a major sticking point for the independent monitor this time. So we expect that adjustment to help. Also, Ms. McDermott and I met with our incoming new monitor. The agency is being monitored by Rick Nellis. And we've had some discussions, and it's going to be an ongoing conversation, but basically about his expectations and how he wants to receive data from us, and just sort of basically a monitoring philosophy for going forward. So we are optimistic about how that new relationship is going to develop.
Thank you. Is there any questions? Well, I have a concern.
Okay.
This 18 cases, it's in the IMR. It's been said to me, it's been said to us more than once. And now I'm hearing it was one snapshot at one time. I don't know if it was asked, how many new cases did you get this month? How many cases are past the deadline? I thought it was based on statistical data, not just one shot in time. Is that what you're saying? It was just like 1 month they were asked how many cases they had. And so I guess what we need is a real assessment, like the IMR says, we need to have a
longer assessment. And okay, we can certainly look at what we can do about that. We had to repost the data analyst position because the first time we only had a single applicant, and I don't think it's helpful to the agency to be sure we're getting the best candidate if we only interview one person. So I'm still waiting for those applications, but that will certainly be a priority.
Okay, and I think the IMR made the same recommendation the board has made, that we need somebody to come in there and do a job study. I think I forgot what did
to do a time management study, and they actually at this point pointed that responsibility at something the city needs to take responsibility for rather than trying to put it on the board. I noted that change in language.
Okay. Whatever the case may be, we just need to get that moving, because like I said, I thought 18 was based on real statistics. So, and I was concerned about having them so many compared to IA. So, okay. So with that, thank you for that report, Director Ewing, and we'll move on to item 15. Is there any old business?
There's just one thing I wanted to mention, and I think I mentioned it before, so it kind of falls under old business. Reports from city departments. Can we do that at the beginning of the meeting at some point instead of at the end? I don't know why it changed. We did it at the beginning before, so I don't remember voting for it to go to the end, but I know that other folks have, other lives and families and stuff like that, and some of the folks that are reporting. And for them to sit on a meeting like this until the very end, if they don't necessarily have to, I don't think it's fair. I think we could be a little bit more efficient with our time as individuals and allow those folks to move on to other things in their lives if they can give us a good report. Just want feedback from the board. I don't know how you guys feel. That's just how I feel about it.
Well, we changed it in policy and procedures, and it was in there. And the reason we changed it is because I'm about board business. And I want to make sure when we have action items, and hopefully our meetings don't last this long. It just does when we have appeals, because our meetings don't last nearly as long under me as we did as it did prior. But I want to make sure we have a quorum and we take care of board business and action items before we hear reports. The priority for me is board business. I like to hear from the other departments. I like to hear their reports or whatever. But my concern was board business.
You can take care of board business wherever we put it in the agenda. We've done it before. It didn't affect our board business. So I'm just saying, I'm just looking out for the folks with families and doing other stuff. I don't think they have to be here as long.
Well,
our pace is our pace. We're going to take care of board business regardless, but I just think as a courtesy to them, and we appreciate the city report, the department reports and stuff. We can put it at the beginning.
Well, we can certainly discuss it. And if we want to change it back in policy and procedure and the board members feel like that's what they want to do, I don't have a problem with that. I was just telling you the reason that I did it, because I wanted to make sure we had a quorum. And if members have to leave or whatever, and we don't have a quorum, that was the issue. But if we want to change it back, so as long as it's not an hour, our meetings are pretty short as it is. I don't mind revisiting that issue. Okay, so we can do that. All right. It's not set in stone for me. It's not, like I said, I'm willing to open that back up for discussion. All right. So with that, is there did we say we were going to make a motion? Is there a motion to adjourn?
There was a new business agenda item, but.
Oh, I'm sorry. New business. Is there any new business?
No.
Thanks for pointing that out. I'm trying to cross them out as I go. All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Miss Barella?
Chair French, I think your policies and procedures don't require.
Don't require it again, right? Isn't that what I just said? We don't require it. And then I asked for it. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
You
Thank
too.
you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.